Welcome on board, chosen one. Let's not waste time pretending things were misunderstood. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew who you were. They knew what you carried, and they still chose to smile in your face while planning behind your back. That's the part they never expected you to find out. That's the part they thought would stay buried forever. Remember the whispers. They're not that special. Remember the looks. They'll break eventually. Remember the jokes disguised as concern. Oh, the legend needs to bow now. Funny how quiet it got after that, isn't it? You felt it long before you could explain it. The sudden distance, the strange tension when you entered a room, the way conversations stopped mid-sentence, the way support turned into silence. You weren't paranoid. You weren't imagining enemies. You were standing in the middle of a secret operation designed to wear you down while pretending to cheer you on. And here's the uncomfortable truth that stings them the most. You didn't collapse. You didn't beg. You didn't disappear. You adapted. You went quiet. You watched. You survived. That's when the fear started. Behind closed doors, your name never stopped coming up. Not because they admired you, but because they couldn't control you. You were supposed to doubt yourself. You were supposed to burn out. You were supposed to become small enough to manage. Instead, you became unpredictable, calm, focused, dangerous in the most inconvenient way. They tried everything: distraction, gaslighting, group pressure, rewriting history. Some of them played the victim, some played the hero, some acted like they never knew what was happening. Same script, different masks. And now look at them, still watching, still checking, still wondering how you're standing after what they did. Before we go any further, press the like button and subscribe. Not for me, for the mission. This message moves further every time you do that, and it keeps this voice loud enough to reach the ones who need it. Now back to business. There's a moment after every failed ambush where the attackers don't celebrate. They retreat into silence. They replay everything. They argue among themselves about where it went wrong. That's the moment you're in right now. The storm already passed. The damage is done. And you're still here, standing in the aftermath, wondering why the air feels different. It feels different because the secret cracked. Someone talked, not out of courage, out of guilt, out of fear, out of exhaustion from carrying lies that were never theirs to begin with. The group chats, the side meetings, the fake concern layered over real jealousy, the coordinated effort to isolate you while pretending it was for your own good. It all spilled out, and once one piece surfaced, the rest couldn't stay hidden. That's the part they didn't plan for. People crack, loyalty decays, silence rots the soul. And when the pressure gets heavy enough, someone always chooses relief over protection. Now everything you sensed makes sense. The sudden shift in tone, the passive-aggressive encouragement, the way they celebrated you publicly but questioned you privately. They weren't confused about you. They were threatened by what they couldn't replicate. Here's the part that hurts them the most. You never had to attack. You never had to expose them. You never had to beg for the truth. You simply kept becoming more you, and that alone unraveled everything. History is full of people like you. Not loud at first, not flashy, just resilient. The kind who outlast storms instead of fighting them head-on. The kind who let enemies exhaust themselves while they conserve strength. Every empire that collapsed underestimated someone exactly like that. They thought time was on their side. They thought repetition would wear you down. They thought isolation would make you desperate. Instead, it sharpened you. Now they're the ones replaying old conversations. Now they're the ones wondering if they said too much. Now they're the ones realizing the secret they hid wasn't small. It was cruel. It was calculated. And it's way worse than anyone expected. This isn't revenge season. This is clarity season. You don't need to confront them. The universe already rearranged the board. You don't need to explain yourself. The truth has a way of introducing itself without permission. You don't need closure from people who only understood you when they were losing access to you. Stand where you are. Feel the quiet. That's not emptiness. That's power settling in. They called you dramatic. They called you sensitive. They said you'd never last. And now they're whispering your name like a problem they failed to solve. Welcome to the part of the story where the villain stops performing and starts telling the truth. And now comes the part where the room goes quiet and the doors lock from the inside. Because what we're about to unfold next isn't entertainment. It's exposure. It's the kind of truth that makes weak people click away and strong ones lean closer to the screen. The secret they hid from you wasn't accidental, and it definitely wasn't small. It was layered, rehearsed, and protected for years. And once you see it clearly, you won't be able to unsee it. So listen closely, chosen one. If something in your chest feels tight right now, that's not fear, that's recognition. The universe doesn't pull just anyone into moments like this. It pulls the ones who were lied to the longest and still survived. If you're ready to stop guessing and finally understand what was happening behind your back, drop a comment with 777. Not as a trend, as a signal that you're prepared to face the full picture without flinching. And do me one thing before we go deeper. Like this and subscribe, not for numbers, but to strengthen this message. Every time you do, this truth reaches someone else who's been quietly questioning their reality too. Now take a breath. We're about to break this down step by step, slowly, clearly, and I promise you this. If you're truly one of the chosen ones, you won't want to leave halfway. The pull to stay until the end will be undeniable. Let's get started. Number 1, they didn't talk about you. They ran war rooms. When people meet in secret to discuss one person, it's never curiosity. It's fear dressed up as strategy. Let's strip the lie right now. These weren't harmless conversations. These weren't people checking in or being concerned. This was coordination. This was planning. This was a group of insecure minds sitting together, convincing each other that you were the problem because admitting your strength was too uncomfortable. While you were living your life, handling your responsibilities, trying to make sense of strange energy shifts, they were gathering without you, not once, not occasionally, repeatedly, rooms, calls, private chats, whispered meetups. Your name wasn't dropped casually, it was placed at the center of the table. You weren't a topic, you were the agenda. Here's the part that should make you smile in that quiet, dangerous way. People only organize like this when one individual disrupts their balance. Nobody forms committees over someone irrelevant. Nobody rehearses narratives about someone powerless. They gathered because your presence unsettled them. Your consistency made them nervous. Your silence confused them, and confusion, to weak people, feels like a threat. They studied you like you weren't human. Your tone, your pauses, your reactions, your habits. They replayed moments where you didn't react the way they expected. They slowed down conversations, analyzed facial expressions, rewrote entire scenes just to justify why you didn't fit neatly into their control system. You weren't unpredictable, you were uncontrollable, and that scared them. One of them would always start with fake concern. That's the oldest trick in the book. I'm just worried about them. I think something's off. I just want what's best. Then the real work began. Little exaggerations, strategic omissions, carefully framed half-truths. By the end of those sessions, you were painted as unstable, difficult, arrogant, or dangerous, all without you ever being present to defend yourself. And here's the sick genius of it. They practiced responses to things you hadn't even said yet. Think about that. They role-played future conversations. They prepared emotional reactions. They preloaded excuses. They built a script for a version of you that existed only in their imagination. That's not misunderstanding. That's premeditation. If you ever wondered why certain people reacted to you strangely, now you know. They weren't responding to you. They were responding to a character that had been rehearsed behind closed doors. You walked into rooms already convicted, in conversations you never attended. You probably asked yourself some painful questions back then. Why does it feel like people already made up their mind about me? Why do they look at me like I did something I don't remember doing? Why does defending myself only make things worse? That's because you weren't arguing with individuals. You were up against a collective narrative. Here's where the villain in you should wake up and stretch. You survived a coordinated psychological operation without even knowing the full rules of the game. You kept your composure while being misrepresented. You stayed standing while people compared notes on how to push your buttons. That's not weakness. That's resilience under fire. They told themselves stories to sleep at night, that you'd crack, that you'd explode, that you'd expose yourself as the monster they invented. But you didn't. You stayed measured. You stayed observant. You stayed human. And that made them panic even more. Because nothing terrifies manipulators like someone who doesn't perform on command. They wanted control, not truth. They wanted compliance, not clarity. They wanted you predictable, reactive, and apologetic. Instead, you became quiet. And quiet people make liars nervous. Silence gives nothing to twist. Calm offers no leverage. Let's be honest. If roles were reversed, they would have collapsed in weeks. They wouldn't have handled being analyzed, misquoted, and quietly targeted by a group. They wouldn't have slept at night knowing rooms full of people were dissecting their every move. But you did. You kept going. You adapted without becoming bitter. And now the irony lands like a blade. The very gatherings meant to destroy you became evidence of how powerful you were all along. The secret they hid wasn't just that they talked about you, it's that they needed each other to deal with one person. That's the part they hope you never fully grasp. They weren't united by truth, they were united by insecurity. They weren't protecting anyone, they were protecting their fragile sense of superiority. And the moment one of them cracked and told the truth, the entire illusion collapsed. So if you're wondering right now, was it really that deep? Yes, it was deeper than you imagined, deeper than gossip, deeper than jealousy. It was systematic, it was intentional, and it failed. You're still here, clearer, sharper, harder to fool, and they're left with nothing but old notes, broken scripts, and the haunting realization that all that effort still didn't stop you. That's not just survival, that's victory wearing a calm face, and we're only getting started. Number 2, smiling in your face, bleeding you in secret. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one who hates you openly, it's the one who hugs you while sharpening the knife. Let this sink in slowly, because this part usually hurts the most. Through all of it, through the planning, the meetings, the quiet war rooms, they still showed up in your world like friends. Same jokes, same tone, same fake warmth. They laughed with you, checked in on you, even defended you in public, all while clocking out of one role and clocking into another the moment you left the room. That wasn't kindness, that was performance. They didn't just lie to you, they rehearsed lying to you. Imagine this. Someone spends hours tearing your name apart, questioning your sanity, rewriting your intentions, painting you as the villain. Then they take a breath, fix their posture, soften their face, and send you a message like nothing happened. Hey, hope you're doing okay. That level of split existence isn't normal. That's not maturity. That's training. And yes, they trained. They practiced how to look relaxed around you. They coached each other on facial expressions. They reminded one another not to flinch, not to overcompensate, not to slip up. Think about how twisted that is. You weren't just dealing with fake people. You were dealing with people actively suppressing guilt so they could stay close enough to observe you. You may have felt it without understanding it, that weird emotional lag. The smiles that didn't reach their eyes, the laughter that felt a second too late, the support that felt hollow, like it was memorized instead of felt. You probably asked yourself, why does this feel off when everything looks fine? That's because your intuition was picking up on the split. They lived double lives around you. One identity was friendly, helpful, familiar. The other was strategic, cold, and calculating. One face smiled at you, the other discussed you like a problem to be solved. And switching between those two became so normal to them that they stopped seeing how unnatural it was. Here's a quote that fits perfectly. Anyone who has to practice being normal around you was never safe to begin with. Imagine a stage play where the actors forget their acting. That's what happened. They wore the mask so long, they started believing it was their real face. But masks crack under pressure. They always do. They told themselves they were protecting peace. They said it was for the greater good. They convinced themselves that deception was necessary because you wouldn't understand. That's how people justify betrayal without choking on it. They turn cruelty into responsibility and call it maturity. But let's be brutally honest. If they truly believed they were right, they wouldn't have needed to hide. Truth doesn't whisper in corners. It doesn't need rehearsals. It doesn't require emotional gymnastics to maintain eye contact. Another truth they don't want you to realize is this. It takes effort to fake care. It takes energy to maintain two versions of reality, and that effort drained them far more than they'll ever admit. Imagine carrying two scripts at all times, one for you, one for the group. Imagine constantly checking yourself. Did I say too much? Did my face give it away? Did they notice the pause? That level of internal tension eats people alive. You weren't paranoid for feeling tension around them. You were standing next to people actively suppressing themselves. You might be wondering right now, how could they do that to me and still look me in the eye? Because shame doesn't always look like guilt. Sometimes it looks like politeness. Sometimes it looks like over-friendliness. Sometimes it looks like someone trying way too hard to seem supportive. Here's another gut punch for the enemy. Only people with something to hide work that hard to appear harmless. They thought proximity gave them power. They believed staying close meant staying in control. What they didn't realize is that staying close to someone you're betraying slowly poisons you from the inside. Every smile becomes heavier. Every conversation becomes a test. Every moment around you reminds them of what they're pretending not to be. Imagine a person standing in sunlight while holding a lie. The longer they stay, the hotter it gets. Eventually, something burns. That's why cracks started showing. A tone shift here, a strange reaction there, passive-aggressive comments disguised as jokes, support that felt conditional. You didn't imagine that. You were witnessing emotional fatigue from people trying to keep their masks glued on. And you stayed real. That's the part they never planned for. You didn't mirror their fake energy. You didn't start acting. You didn't put on a performance to survive. You stayed grounded, authentic, calm, and that contrast exposed them without you ever saying a word. Here's a metaphor you'll understand instantly. Imagine standing next to someone wearing a cheap costume in a quiet room. The louder the silence gets, the more you hear the fabric stretch. That's what your presence did to them. You didn't attack, you didn't accuse, you just existed honestly. And honesty is unbearable to people living lies. Another truth they won't admit. They feared the moment you'd finally see through them. Every interaction carried that fear underneath. Every smile was layered with anxiety. Every hug was a risk. And then someone cracked. Someone got tired of carrying two realities. Someone couldn't handle the contradiction anymore. Someone finally admitted how much effort it took to pretend. That's when the mask slipped, not dramatically, but quietly. A confession, a detail, a truth that didn't line up with the story. That's usually how illusions die, not with explosions, but with whispers. If you're asking yourself, was any of it real? Here's the answer that stings but sets you free. Some moments were real, some laughs were real, but the loyalty wasn't. And loyalty is the part that matters. Another quote to keep with you: fake love feels warm until you realize it never protected you. You weren't wrong for trusting. You weren't foolish for believing people could be genuine. The failure wasn't yours, it was theirs. They chose duplicity over honesty, control over respect, strategy over integrity. And now the universe has a funny way of handling people like that. It removes the mask and leaves them exposed to their own reflection. No audience, no script, just who they really are. You don't need revenge. You don't need closure conversations. The truth already did the work for you. You walked away with clarity. They're stuck explaining themselves to each other, wondering who else might talk next. That's the quiet win. You stayed human in a room full of actors, and the story keeps unfolding. Number 3. This wasn't drama. It was a military-level setup. When lies need coordination, the truth has already won. Let's stop calling this confusion or miscommunication. This was a coordinated assault, clean and deliberate. They didn't just vent emotions, they built a system. Language was standardized, stories were aligned, reactions were rehearsed. Everyone involved knew exactly what version of events to repeat and which details to quietly erase. That's not chaos, that's control. Imagine a group agreeing on a script before stepping on stage, except the stage was your life and you never agreed to the play. They positioned themselves as tired saviors, repeating the same lines to anyone who would listen. We tried. We cared. We did everything we could. Meanwhile, you were cast as the problem without ever being invited to the conversation. That's how narratives spread without resistance. Roles were assigned like pieces on a chessboard. One played the calm, logical voice. One kept records, screenshots, timestamps, anything that could be weaponized later. One acted as the bridge, pretending neutrality while feeding both sides. One made sure the story traveled far enough to stick. And then there was the most dangerous role of all, the one closest to you, the one who listened when you were honest, the one who saw you tired, unsure, human. They didn't protect that vulnerability. They packaged it, delivered it, translated your private moments into ammunition. That's not betrayal by accident, that's espionage. You might be asking yourself, how did they all sound so similar? Because they practiced. Why did defending myself never work? Because the verdict was already agreed on. Why did it feel like I was fighting smoke? Because you weren't dealing with individuals, you were facing a synchronized machine. Here's the part that flips the power back to you. Machines break when one part malfunctions, and someone always slips. Someone always talks. Someone always gets tired of pretending they were the hero. They needed numbers to face you. You needed clarity. That's the difference. Number 4. The receipts that buried them alive. The truth doesn't chase anyone. It waits, and when it arrives, it brings proof. This is where the story stops being a feeling and starts becoming a fact. Screenshots, threads, time-stamped conversations stacked on top of each other like a crime scene file. Your name didn't appear once or twice. It showed up again and again, across days, across moods, across platforms. That alone tells you everything. Nobody obsesses over someone insignificant. Imagine opening a vault and realizing every suspicion you ever buried was neatly documented. Messages where your struggles were dissected like lab results. Jokes made at your lowest points. Celebrations disguised as updates when you were hurting. They didn't just watch your pain, they tracked it, like analysts following a stock they hoped would crash. You might be wondering, was I ever respected in those rooms? Here's the cold answer. Respect was never the goal. Control was. They treated your emotions like disposable data, something to extract, interpret, and throw away once it served the narrative. You weren't a person to them in those threads. You were a case study they competed over, each one trying to sound smarter, calmer, more justified than the last. Picture a group of people circling a screen, zooming in on your words, screenshotting tone, freezing moments out of context. That's not concern, that's fixation. And fixation always exposes insecurity. Strong people don't need archives. Honest people don't need folders. Another truth you deserve to hear. When people collect evidence against you in secret, it's because they're afraid you'll expose them in daylight. Every message confirmed how invested they were in rewriting who you were. And here's the irony that should make you exhale. They documented their own guilt. Every thread was a footprint. Every screenshot was a confession waiting to surface. You didn't need to prove anything. The truth did it for you. And once you see the receipts, the illusion never survives again. Number 5. The game was rigged before you walked in. If every move you make is used against you, you're not being tested. You're being hunted. This part is where the mask fully drops. They didn't just wait for mistakes. They designed them. They built trigger protocols, invisible traps meant to force reactions they could later parade as proof. Not because you were unstable, but because they needed you to look unstable. Imagine being placed in a maze where every exit leads to blame. If you stayed quiet, you were labeled distant, cold, antisocial. If you spoke up, you were called intense, emotional, difficult. If you joked, it was inappropriate. If you stayed serious, you were hostile. There was no correct response because correctness was never the goal. The goal was documentation. They poked wounds they knew existed. They brought up topics at the wrong moments. They applied pressure in public, then played innocent when you reacted. And the moment you showed any human response, it was logged, replayed, exaggerated. That wasn't observation. That was entrapment. You probably asked yourself, why does it feel like I'm always wrong no matter what I do? Because you were never meant to win. This wasn't a conversation. It was a courtroom with a verdict already written. You were walking into scenes where the narrative was set before you arrived. Here's the part they didn't anticipate. You noticed the pattern. You felt the repetition. You sensed the manipulation, even when you couldn't yet name it. And instead of exploding the way they hoped, you adapted. You pulled back. You observed. You stopped feeding the machine. That's when their system started failing, because trigger protocols only work on people who don't realize they're inside one. Once awareness enters the room, manipulation loses oxygen. The traps stop snapping shut. The provocations start looking obvious. And the manipulators panic. Here's the quote that ends this section. A rigged game collapses the moment the target stops playing. They needed reactions. You gave them restraint. They needed chaos. You chose control. And that quiet choice broke everything they built. Number 6, they tried to cut your lines and leave you stranded. Isolation is the favorite weapon of cowards who can't win in daylight. This is where the attack turned surgical. They didn't just want to control the story, they wanted to control who you could tell it to. So they went after your connections one by one, quietly, carefully, like people afraid of being exposed if too many voices compared notes. They planted doubt the same way poison gets slipped into a drink, slowly, casually. I don't know. Something feels off about them. I'm just worried you're getting the wrong side. Maybe you misunderstood. Each sentence sounded harmless, alone. Together, they built a fog thick enough to blur reality. Imagine being in a room full of mirrors that all reflect the same lie. You start questioning your own memory, not because it's wrong, but because repetition is powerful. They created a closed loop where every voice confirmed their version, and any outside perspective was framed as naive, biased, or dangerous. That's not disagreement. That's propaganda. They rejected their own statements when it suited them. What they did became what you were accused of. What they initiated became your reaction problem. Projection wasn't accidental. It was strategy. If they could confuse you long enough, they could exhaust you into silence. You might have wondered, why do I feel like I'm losing myself? Because they were actively distorting your sense of reality. Gaslighting isn't about lying once. It's about replacing truth with doubt until you start editing yourself for their comfort. Here's the part that matters now. People who isolate you fear what happens when you're heard. They underestimated one thing. Isolation didn't weaken you. It forced you inward, and inside, your intuition sharpened. The noise dropped. The manipulation became obvious. They tried to erase your support system. Instead, they exposed themselves. And once you see that, their control never works again. Number 7. The real reason they couldn't stand you. People don't destroy what's empty. They destroy what reminds them of what they'll never be. This is where the whole lie collapses. Strip away the strategy, the meetings, the fake concern, and you hit the raw nerve underneath it all. Resentment, plain, undiluted, unprocessed jealousy that sat in their chest and rotted. You carried something they didn't, and no amount of pretending could erase that gap. You didn't even have to be loud about it. That's what made it worse for them. Your confidence wasn't forced. Your peace wasn't borrowed. Your authenticity wasn't performative. You were simply yourself, and that alone exposed everything they were faking. Imagine standing in a room holding a lit candle while others are stumbling around pretending it's bright. Your existence made their darkness visible. They felt small around you, not because you made them small, but because you refused to shrink. And instead of confronting that feeling like grown adults, they chose the easier path. Tear you down, drag you into the same emotional basement they lived in. If they couldn't rise, they'd pull. Here's the part that should make your stomach turn and your spine straighten at the same time. Their resentment bonded them. Complaining about you became their ritual. Criticizing you became their common language. You weren't just a target. You were the glue holding their fragile group together. Without you, they had nothing to unite against. Think about how empty that is. A group whose only purpose is someone else's destruction. When hatred becomes community, collapse is guaranteed. They convinced themselves you were arrogant because humility scared them. They labeled you fake because they didn't know how to be real. They mocked your peace because chaos was the only thing they understood. Here's another truth. Jealousy doesn't want what you have. It wants you to lose it. But they failed. You didn't lose yourself. You didn't absorb their poison. You walked through resentment and came out clearer. And now their purpose is gone because you're still standing. Number 8. The lies they fed themselves to sleep at night. The scariest lies aren't told to others. They're whispered to the mirror. This is where their minds turned into closed rooms with no windows. At some point, they stopped pretending they were lying and started believing it. Not because it was true, but because repetition is powerful when guilt is inconvenient. They told the same story again and again until it felt solid enough to stand on. And once it felt real, they stopped questioning anything. Whenever doubt tried to surface, the group crushed it fast. A raised eyebrow, a warning joke, a quick reminder of everything you did. Guilt wasn't processed. It was silenced. Anyone who hesitated was treated like a liability. Imagine a room where every alarm is ripped off the wall because the noise is annoying. That's what they did to their conscience. They simplified everything to survive themselves. You became the threat. That label solved all their discomfort. Once that was decided, anything done to you became justified. Twisting your words was protection. Isolating you was prevention. Hurting you was necessary. That's how people turn cruelty into duty. You might wonder, did they ever feel bad? Briefly. But feeling bad required responsibility, and responsibility threatened the story. So the group rewrote morality instead. Right became whatever benefited them. Wrong became whatever you did. When a group agrees on a lie, truth becomes the enemy. Picture a cult without uniforms. Same thinking, same language, same enemy, same permission to act without reflection. The more they repeated it, the safer they felt. And the safer they felt, the deeper they went. Here's the irony, they'll never escape. Anyone who needs constant reassurance they're right already knows they're wrong. You didn't need to dehumanize anyone to stand tall. They did. And that difference matters, because self-deception collapses the moment truth enters the room. And when it does, there's nowhere left to hide. Number 9. The moment the truth set you loose. Vindication isn't loud. It's the quiet relief of finally knowing you were never crazy. This is where the weight lifts, not dramatically, not with applause, but with that slow, steady exhale you didn't even realize you'd been holding for years, because now you know. Every confusing moment finally lines up. Every strange reaction has a cause. Every instinct you second-guessed turns out to have been sharp, accurate, and ahead of its time. You weren't imagining things. You weren't too sensitive. You weren't reading into nothing. The proof didn't come from rumors or guesses. It came from someone who was there, someone who participated, someone who watched it unfold from the inside and finally cracked under the truth. Documentation, patterns, confirmation, that's not opinion. That's reality catching up. While they were busy obsessing over how to stop you, you were quietly evolving. You didn't know the full story, but you felt the pressure, and instead of breaking, you adapted, you learned. You became harder to manipulate, harder to predict, harder to control. That's the part they never anticipated. Here's the irony that should make you smile. They studied you like a threat, and in doing so, made you one. They built their schedules, their conversations, their alliances around you. You were their common enemy, their motivation, their focus. Meanwhile, you were building a life that didn't require them at all. Growth without permission, strength without witnesses. You might be thinking, was it all a waste of time? No, it was a forging process. Pressure reveals structure, and what survived in you is something they'll never have. One last truth to carry forward. When the truth arrives, it doesn't ask for revenge, it hands you freedom. And that freedom is the real victory. Number 10. Now the fire is on their side of the door. Nothing terrifies liars more than the moment they realize they're no longer controlling the story. This is the turning point they never prepared for, the shift they mocked, the moment they swore would never come. They're panicking now, and it shows in ways they can't hide. Rushed explanations, nervous oversharing, sudden concern about how things look. The same people who once felt untouchable are now checking over their shoulders, wondering who knows what and who might talk next. Here's the poetic justice of it. They're feeling exactly what they tried to inject into you: anxiety, doubt, suspicion, that constant hum of unease that never lets you rest. Except there's one key difference. You endured it without lying. They're drowning in it because they did. Imagine spending years constructing a house out of cardboard and calling it solid. It looks impressive from a distance, but the moment rain hits, everyone runs. That's their reputation right now, built fast, built loud, built on stories that can't survive scrutiny. You never needed damage control. You never needed to manage optics. You never had to remember which version of the story you told to which person. Your consistency is what saved you. Their performance is what's destroying them. You might wonder, do they finally understand what they did? Some of them do. That's the worst part for them. Awareness without redemption. Regret without repair. And for the rest, denial will be their final shelter until it collapses too. Here's the line that seals it. When fear replaces confidence, truth has already arrived. They're scrambling because they know this isn't about revenge, it's about exposure. You walked through fire and came out intact. They're facing smoke and already choking. The universe didn't rush this moment. It waited until the contrast was undeniable. And now the spotlight feels very different when you're standing in it alone. Number 11. The same system turned its back on them. You don't have to swing back when gravity is already pulling them down. This is the part they never accounted for. You stepping aside. No revenge speeches, no dramatic confrontations, just truth moving quietly through the same channels they once poisoned. The universe has a cruel sense of balance like that. It doesn't shout. It reassigns momentum. The very network they weaponized is now doing the work for you. Conversations feel different. People hesitate before repeating old stories. Details don't line up anymore. Perspectives are shifting because lies require constant energy, and truth only needs one opening. Once doubt enters a closed system, everything starts leaking. Imagine a spider trapped in its own web, pulling harder every time it panics, only tightening the strands around itself. That's them right now. Every attempt to control the fallout exposes another inconsistency. Every explanation creates more questions. Every denial sounds rehearsed. They built a machine that only functioned as long as you stayed silent and confused. You didn't even need to speak. Time did it. You might be thinking, should I clear my name? You don't have to. Your life already did. Consistency beats correction. Calm beats defense. Truth doesn't argue. It waits until the lies trip over each other. Your job now is simple, and that simplicity is what scares them most. Keep living as yourself. Keep moving forward without checking behind you. Keep choosing clarity over bitterness. There's nothing left for you to prove. Their lies are eating them from the inside, and that process doesn't need your involvement. They wanted chaos. They got consequence. They wanted control. They got exposure. The universe didn't punish them loudly. It let them drown in the echo of their own deception. And the quiet way you walk away is the final message they can't rewrite. You're done fighting. They're just beginning. Number 12. You were uncontrollable, and that terrified them. People don't attack what they understand. They attack what they can't own. Here's the truth they'll never say out loud. They didn't target you because you were weak. They targeted you because you couldn't be bent. You didn't move by their signals. You didn't shapeshift to fit the room. You stayed real in a world addicted to costumes, and that alone made you dangerous. You didn't need to announce your integrity. It showed up in how you spoke, how you moved, how you didn't scramble for approval. In spaces where pretending was currency, your authenticity exposed the fraud. And nothing angers insecure people more than a mirror they didn't ask for. Imagine a room full of mannequins, perfectly dressed, perfectly posed, lifeless behind the polish. Then imagine one person breathing, not louder, just real. That single breath shatters the illusion. That's what you did without trying. Your presence questioned their excuses. Your progress challenged the stories they told themselves about why they stayed stuck. They wanted influence. You had independence. They wanted obedience. You had self-trust. Control was impossible, so character assassination became the substitute. When control fails, sabotage becomes the strategy. You might wonder, why didn't they just leave me alone? Because your existence forced comparison. Every time you chose integrity over convenience, it reminded them of a choice they avoided. Every time you succeeded without cheating, it threatened the shortcuts they relied on. Here's the part that should settle deep. Authenticity is a threat to anyone surviving on performance. You didn't steal anything from them. You revealed what they lacked, and instead of rising, they attacked. But attacks only work when the target absorbs the poison. You didn't. Now they're left managing optics while you manage growth. They're defending stories while you're building a future. The control they wanted never belonged to them, and that's why they aimed at you, because you couldn't be owned. Number 13. They forged what they couldn't destroy. Pressure doesn't break the right material, it reveals it. Here's the ending they never planned for. While they obsessed over tearing you down, you were quietly reinforcing everything that mattered. You didn't know every detail of the attack, but you felt enough to respond with instinct instead of panic. And those instincts saved you. Every time you pulled back, that wasn't weakness, that was calibration. Every boundary you set wasn't distance for comfort, it was protection for growth. While they were busy trying to define you in their narrow language, you were slipping out of definition entirely. Harder to label, harder to trap, harder to control. Imagine a cage built for an animal that keeps growing. At first, it holds, then it bends, then it becomes useless. That's what happened. Their limitations didn't shrink you. They made you expand past the frame they designed. You might ask, why did this feel so lonely? Because transformation rarely comes with applause. It comes with silence, with space, with moments where you choose yourself even when it costs connection. Loneliness is often the price of becoming someone real. While they were documenting your reactions, you were mastering restraint. While they were predicting your collapse, you were learning your own rhythm, and the universe responded accordingly. Opportunities aligned, clarity sharpened, noise faded. Here's the truth that seals it. They tried to stop you from becoming and accidentally accelerated it. You don't move forward angry. You move forward clear. You don't need to announce your power. It shows up in how little access you give to chaos now. They're still looking backward, trying to explain. You're looking ahead, already moving. That's the rise. And it doesn't need witnesses. Number 14. The crown was never taken, it was revealed. It was never about stopping you, it was about surviving themselves. Here's the final truth. Stripped of drama and excuses, their entire operation wasn't built because of something you did. It was built because of who they are. Empty where you were solid, afraid where you were steady, performing where you were real. You became the screen their insecurities projected onto because facing themselves required a courage they never developed. They told themselves this was about protecting others. It wasn't. They said it was about balance, fairness, concern, lies. It was about envy fermenting in silence until it needed a target. You didn't provoke it. You exposed it by existing without apology. People attack what makes their excuses collapse. Imagine a group standing in a dark room, convincing each other the light is dangerous. Then you walk in carrying clarity, not even trying to lead anyone, just seeing clearly. Suddenly, their darkness has a contrast. And instead of adjusting their eyes, they try to break the light. That's what this was. They weren't united by values. They were united by fear. Fear of being ordinary. Fear of being exposed. Fear that someone could live honestly and still rise. You represented a future they were too scared to earn.